Welcome to Of Knights and Pilgrims, a podcast about Edmund Spenser's The Faerie Queene. I'm Christian Leithart.
I'm David Grubbs.
This is episode 10, in which we will be discussing Canto 8. You can find all of our previous episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anything that connects to any of those. They're on YouTube as well. As I've mentioned before, if you are at all inclined to support us financially, you can click the link in the show notes that will take you to my Ko-fi page. It's not Ko-fi. It's not coffee. It's Ko-fi. And would be happy to accept whatever you're willing to throw our way. As I said, today we're discussing Canto 8. The short version of this is that Red Cross is trapped in a giant's castle, and Prince Arthur and Una ride to his rescue. So it's essentially a fight scene, a long fight scene.
It is a long fight scene, but that first stanza, I don't think we can skip over it.
Agreed.
This sets up the metaphor, the allegory. Even though we're focused on what Prince Arthur's doing, what his squire is doing, what Una is doing, what Spenser would have us first see is that Red Cross Knight is he's still the main character here. So the first stanza, me, how many perils do enfold the righteous man to make him daily fall, were not that heavenly grace doth him uphold, and steadfast truth acquit him out of all. Her love is firm, her care continual, so oft as he through his own foolish pride or weakness is to sinful bands made thrall. Else should this Red Cross Knight in bands have died, for whose deliverance she this prince doth thither guide. So up until that last couple of lines, this is a general statement about what it is to be the righteous in the world. Were it not grace that upheld it, were it not that the steadfast truth, in this case, as we said in the last episode, Una is the truth, but Una is also the church, with firm and continual care, firm love and continual care, seeking out those who fall because of their foolish pride or their weakness, upholding them as an instrument of God's grace.
I think that's one of my favorite things about the book. It's not just an epic poem, and it's not just the allegorical parts can be fun, but also it's so Christian in its bones.
Yeah.
That our main character cannot do it by himself. He needs grace. He needs Una's help. He needs Arthur's help. He needs God's help. And all of those things come outside of his own abilities. And I love the emphasis in the middle of book one. We know Red Cross, like the whole thing is his quest, but in the middle of his preparation for the quest, he is the object of the quest for other people. And you don't often get that in a protagonist, where there's a moment where the protagonist becomes a side character and has to be rescued by someone else. It helps us see how his character can change so much, which is really helpful.
It's the beginning of the Return of the Jedi. Red Cross Knight Han Solo.
Right.
It's frozen in carbonite.
If we think of Han as the main character, right. It would be more like if Luke got frozen in carbonite and Han had to rescue him. You have this whole episode where the main character is just literally in prison and has to be rescued by others. And I think that's actually, there's something very Christian about that idea that you cannot be the main character all the time. There's others out there that you need. You need to rely on their help.
And this is all part of crushing Red Cross Knight's propensity towards, well, what stanza one calls it, his own foolish pride, thinking that he can solo all the boss monsters.
I think it's hard. So at school I teach the ancient epics. I think one of the things that makes a book like the Odyssey so good is every time you try to come up with a unifying theory for it, there's few little things here and there that don't quite fit in, and that gives it a richness that I think has made it last so long. But when you get out of those epics and into something like this, the willingness of Spenser to have Una correct Red Cross's foolishness is just not something that you see in the ancient stories. Penelope is not a bad character.
She's a great character.
But she does not tell Odysseus what to do. Like, that's just not how the characters function. In fact, Odysseus doesn't really take advice. I mean, he listens to Athena, but she's kind of like a man.
Well, she's a goddess. She represents wisdom. Ooh, I think that maybe Una is less Penelope and more Athena.
Okay, but she's both because they do end up
Yes.
together at the end.
Yeah.
Sorry, spoilers. You know,
Well, you didn't see that coming?
yeah. Our listeners know fairy tales; they know how this works. But yes, I totally agree. What's so interesting is he's rescued from this dungeon. He's assisted in the Cave of Error, and then this is not the end. He continually is gotten out of scrapes even after this experience in Orgoglio's dungeon. But let's get to the action. Let's get to the action part. So Prince Arthur's squire, who's not named, nor he's just called the squire. So he doesn't even really have a.
I believe he gets a name later.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
At this point, he doesn't have a clear allegorical status. And then Una and the dwarf are all head back to the castle. And the squire, he has this magic horn. It's kind of almost a horn of truth, because in stanza 4, no false enchantment nor deceptful train might once abide the terror of that blast. So when he blows his horn, all enchantments fall away, locked doors fly open or break. And so he stands at the giant's gate, blows it, and the gate flies open, and Orgoglio comes rushing out to find out what's going on. And Arthur, and Duessa joins in the fight too. She hops on her 7-headed monster. But then Arthur immediately rushes in. There's no preamble. There's no speeches. They just rush at each other.
This is not a duel. It's not a duel. It's not a joust. It's not a fight of honor like between Red Cross and Sansjoy in the court of Lucifera. This is a different kind of battle. Orgoglio is just the enemy, not another knight to be honored.
So in stanza 6, Arthur's with courage filled and eager greediness through every member thrilled. That word greedy or greediness is used a couple of times to refer to him. We're used to thinking of righteous characters or holy characters as kind of models of temperance. And in a way that's true. But I like the idea that Arthur is greedy for right, greedy for doing the right thing. Here's a monster that needs to die, and I am eager to go through with this. I am ready for it.
I think that's exactly the way to read it. I teach rhetoric, and one of our big assignments is dealing with writing about virtues, writing about vices, and often a student will choose lust as a vice to write about, and then immediately fall down the hole, whether it's the dictionary or whether it's, some kind of older text where the word lust is not used to mean sinful sexual desire. Lust is used to just mean desire in general. They're like, wait, is lust bad or not? And I'm like, well, look closely at your text and see in what sense the word is being used here. And I think, our attention is being drawn to, yes, greed. I think probably even in Spenser's day generally meant bad greed. But in this case, we get reminded that actually there are things that you should be eager to want.
Yeah, it's like Christian hedonism. Fill me up with the glory of God. Like I'm greedy for goodness, greedy for rightness. Or as Stephen Colbert likes to say, when people, he's a Christian, and when people don't, they dismiss Christianity, he says, "Let's find more Jesus for me."
Well, though I don't think Arthur's greedy for Jesus near. He is greedy to kick butt and take names.
Yes. Orgoglio actually does put up a pretty good fight here. I like the end of stanza 7. Arthur leaps aside from Orgoglio's swing because it booted not to think such thunderbolts to bear. So he thinks probably not worth it to get hit by that club, It boots me not to be hit by that. So he jumps to the side, and no shame he thought to shun so hideous might. So it's not, even though I'm leaping out of the way of the blow, I'm not being a coward. It boots me not.
Yeah, maybe not. That. Well, and it definitely would have booted him not, because next stanza, so deeply dented in the driven clay that 3 yards deep a furrow up did throw. Like it's that thing hit like an asteroid, or sorry, not an asteroid, a
meteorite.
A meteorite, yeah. And then he even gets an epic simile for Jove's thunderbolt. Like this is that was a mighty blow.
If you remember that Orgoglio's the child of earth and wind. This is the second time he wounds the earth. The first time it's described like his club is an oak tree that he tore up. It says something like tore up out of
his mother's entrails, or something like that.
Like very explicitly, he's wounding his mother. And this is the sad earth wounded. With so sore a say, did groan full grievous underneath the blow. This guy has no respect for his mother.
He is an unnatural child.
Yes, very true. And his foster father didn't raise him well, as we'll see.
Now, he also missed Red Cross Knight.
That's right.
But what's the difference between the two? Red Cross Knight got knocked over by the wind of the blow. Mm-hmm. He was so frail and unarmored that just the breeze of the passing club knocked him over. It does not affect Arthur that way. Right. Arthur is armed. Arthur is in his strength. And so when Orgoglio misses, he still stands and is able to take advantage of it.
So Duessa is going to attack from the side or sneak up behind Arthur, but then the squire rushes in and blocks her from doing so. And this, I think every time I read this, I'm surprised that the squire plays such a role, because you think Arthur's the champion, he's going to handle this by himself, especially because the squire doesn't even have a name, or at least not yet. He doesn't. Right. Although Arthur hasn't been named either, has he? Is he named in this?
Oh wow! Have I just been mentally
him that? I mean, he's in the little quatrains at the beginning. But I don't think
the prince.
Yeah, he's not. But anyway, the squire plays a big role in defending. Duessa does the classic witch thing of using a magic cup with incantations. Certainly, there's references. This is a reference to Revelation. But also there's enchantresses like, I think Medea uses a cup. And it's a...
Circe has things mixed up in her cup, which she offers to Odysseus, if I remember rightly. The association between witches and poisons in the ancient world was really, really close.
And she sprinkles some of her potion on the squire, and he goes down. And the beast attacks him and almost kills him. Until Arthur realizes what's happening and leaves Orgoglio and hastens toward to help his squire. What did he already chop off his hand?
Oh yeah, in stanza 11, after Orgoglio misses and his club actually gets stuck in the earth. Stanza 10, his boisterous club so buried in the ground he could not rear it up again so light. So it's 9 foot deep in the ground, and then it's kind of stuck. And stanza 10, Prince Arthur at him advantage found and smote off his left arm. Mm-hmm. So he's still got his right arm. He can still fight with that club, but he can't do any more two-handed blows with it.
So Arthur rushes to the squire's assistance, chops off one of the heads of the beast, which seems to go down pretty... Oh, no. It's... I'm skipping ahead a little bit. So he chops off the head of the beast. Orgoglio rushes over to help. And in stanza 18, even though he doesn't have two hands anymore, Orgoglio puts all of his power into his left hand and strikes down on Arthur with his left hand. It hits the shield, knocks him down on the ground, but then by chance, it's not intentional, by chance the cover of the shield, the veil that's over the shield, flies open and blinds the dazzling light of the shield, blinds the giant, the beast, or dazzles the giant, blinds the beast. So it's, what's your take on that? That it's clearly a providential moment.
Yeah, I think that's precisely the word to use here. I mean, we had our attention drawn in the first stanza to the righteous man would daily fall, did not heavenly grace uphold him, right? And so this Arthur's arrival on the scene is an image of heavenly grace, that Red Cross Knight is in need of that assistance, but then Prince Arthur needs that assistance as this seven-headed dragon is coming at him, and his squire steps up to help. But then the squire needs assistance, and so now Red Cross Knight the Prince Arthur steps in to help, and now Prince Arthur needs assistance again, and Deus Ex
Chance.
Machina.
Yeah.
Chance slips in to help. So this scene is all about dramatizing close calls.
Yeah.
Near peril. Were it not for this element, he would have fallen. And that moment happens again and again and again, reinforcing, driving deeper this point that's what this whole canto is about. Red Cross Knights near miss with disaster.
Right, but Red Cross Knight is not even.
He's not even on the scene, but we can't forget that he's here. This is all for his sake.
Right. So the giant in stanza 21, it says, he has read his end in that bright shield. So there's something more than just that it's so shiny it blinds you. There's almost this a significance to the brightness, like it portends doom for all wicked things.
Yeah.
The brightness of the diamond shield. I don't know. It shakes him. Bergoglio realizes that he's no match for this knight.
There's a cool metaphor here in stanza 21 where he has that realization of his coming doom. He had read his end in that bright shield. Stanza 9, the mighty blow of Bergoglio that embeds his club in the ground, gets this epic simile. As when almighty Jove in wrathful mood to wreak the guilt of mortal sins is bent, hurls forth his thundering dart with deadly food, enrolled in flames and smoldering dreariment through riven clouds and molten firmament, the fierce three-forked engine making way both lofty towers and highest trees hath rent. And that's what the club is like. It's like lightning from Jove. But then, stanza 21, the light coming from the shield, as where the Almighty's lightning brand does light, it dims the days in eyne and daunts the senses quite. The giant's club was like the fall of Jove's lightning. But now we see Jove's lightning not flashing forth from the sky down like the club, but actually flashing up from the shield and into the eyes.
It's like it bounced off almost.
Who's almighty?
Right.
In this scene.
Right. Well, so I did wonder about the word choice there. We had talked about in the past, we talked about Jove. I think I had argued that the underworld sequence is almost like this self-contained, like, okay, you can have all your mythology. You can have all your mythology as long as you contain it in this little space where Jove is in charge. There's been a couple of times since then that Una referenced Jove. Why did Jove create? I can't remember what it was, but she referenced Jove, and I think you were probably right that Jove can just be a name for God, the Almighty God. But I do think that word choice, he could have said, as where Jove's lightning brand does light, and he doesn't. And I don't think it's just that he needed to fit the meter. It's meant to emphasize which of these two is stronger. Well, this is the Almighty's lightning.
Yes. I mean, in stanza 9, it's Almighty Jove in wrathful mood, and here it's just the Almighty, and Almighty is capitalized. It's much more. It's not God under the mask of his pagan doublet. It's just the Almighty. And so what the image that the giant sees in the shield is an image of divine judgment. He's not scared of Prince Arthur per se.
Right. So Arthur chops off his leg. He falls down, shaking the ground, and then Arthur jumps on the body, chops off his head. As soon as this is stanza 24, as soon as breath out of his breast had passed, that huge great body which the giant bore was vanished quite, and of that monstrous mass was nothing left but like an empty bladder was. So as soon as he cut off his head, he just sort of, like a balloon, he just sort of sputters out all of the hot air that was keeping him.
In my head canon, it sounds like a whoopee cushion.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm not going to make that noise into the mic, but yes, that's definitely the image that there's this. Yeah. I mean, he's an empty bladder, like a child's balloon. That's how he's all flattened out. Like
he was literally full of hot air.
Yeah, he just had to take his head off, and then the rest of him shoots around the countryside.
Now, when his leg is taken off, two metaphors show up here. Did you catch this? In stanza 9, the lightning of almighty Jove, both lofty towers and highest trees hath rent. And then stanza 21, the Almighty's lightning shows up again. We just talked about that. Stanza 22, the leg gets chopped, and now, as an aged tree, high growing on the top of rocky cliff, is ripped from its roots and then rolls down the rocks. Okay, so it's compared to a tree, or stanza 23, or as a castle reared high and round by subtle engines and malicious sleight, is undermined from the lowest ground. Okay, so yes, stanza 9, the lightning that brings down lofty towers and highest trees. And now the lightning has showed up again in stanza 21. And in stanza 22, the giant falls like a tree. Stanza 23, he falls like a tower.
I think this is a really clever...
That's so cool.
It's a really clever poetic thing to do, because Orgoglio does not describe what he's doing. It's not this irony in the character where Orgoglio says, I'm going to break you down like a castle, and then Prince Arthur breaks him down like a castle. Instead, the poet's kind of doing it for us. So it's almost in the poetic description. The poetic description is almost coming from the character's point of view. That Orgoglio thinks of the swinging of his club as lightning coming down. And as it turns out, that what's actually, like, you've gotten the imagery correct, giant, but you've just gotten the source of the lightning wrong. But it's the poet's doing both of them. And I think, again, setting up for like Canto 9, I think there's something, Spenser seems to do that a lot, where he puts the narrator describes things in a way that actually is the character's perspective. But it's not always apparent that that's how the character is viewing the scene. Duessa tries to escape. The squire stops her. Una rushes up and thanks Arthur and the squire both. But let's get into the castle. Una thanks him for a while, and I feel like we could try to analyze that. But let's just get into the castle. Stanza 29. Arthur's described as having greedy great desire to get into the castle. And again, I don't think the greed there is meant to be negative. I think he has this eagerness to destroy wickedness. He goes in, and the castle is completely empty except for this old man whose head is on backwards. And he's carrying a bunch of rusty keys that have never been used, but the key of every door in the place. This man's name is Ignaro. And he is the foster father of the giant. So ignorance raises empty pride. If Orgoglio had known better, he probably would have been less prideful. Yeah, this is definitely the allegory is, again, very much on the surface here.
Yeah, his face looks backward. He can't see where he's going. He cannot foresee the results of his actions. He's not capable of foresight. He's not capable of proper caution. He literally doesn't see it coming. Whatever it is, he doesn't see it coming. So you can see how, in that sense, ignorance gives birth, or ignorance breeds vanity, because vanity is a particular kind of ignorance. It's the kid who thinks because he's the strongest one on his block that he's the strongest one of all,
right?
And learns that he's wrong.
Spenser feels it necessary to explain in stanza 31 that, so backward still was turned his wrinkled face, unlike to men who ever as they trace both feet and face one way are wont to lead. So normally we have our face and our feet pointing the same way. This guy's head is turned around. And then there's this almost Dickensian moment here.
It's so funny.
Where no matter what Arthur asks Ignaro, he just says, I cannot tell. And the reason I say Dickensian is just because I just feel like Dickens is so good at writing these little side characters that just have one little feature that it's just repeated, and they get associated with that. And just the idea that this guy would only ever say, I cannot tell, no matter what the question was, just strikes me as something that Dickens would have really enjoyed.
Well, we see as he does it that Arthur begins polite, and then as he keeps getting the same answer, Arthur is getting more and more irritated, more annoyed, until finally, stanza 34, his answer likewise was, he could not tell, whose senseless speech and doted ignorance, when as the noble prince had marked well, he guessed his nature by his countenance, and calmed his wrath with goodly temperance. So he's been annoyed as if this old man was making fun of him or trying to thwart him or whatever. But then he watches the old man's, listens to his speech and looks at his face and realizes this old man is in his dotage. He's senile. He literally doesn't know. He's not capable of knowing. This isn't purposeful. Okay, I can't be mad at him.
Right. It's not going to do any good. My righteous anger is in this case misplaced because there's nothing that this guy.
And so he reins it in, right? Just like he helped Una in the last canto rein in her grief. So here he reins in his wrath.
Yeah. But he still has it. He's not just a stoic the whole time. Like Arthur has his emotions.
Yes.
He just knows how to guide them. So he takes the keys and then they start opening all the doors. And this gets kind of dark. Yeah. So the first room that they open is full of gold and treasure, but the floor is covered with the blood of babies and innocents, and defiled with those things. In the next stanza, 36, there's an altar on which true Christians' blood was often spilt, and holy martyrs often done to die with cruel malice and strong tyranny, whose blessed spirits from underneath the stone to God for vengeance cried continually. So it's the altar from Revelation again. The blood of the saints cries out. And so there's clearly, I think historical imagery of, biblical imagery from Revelation, but I think also very much the Catholic imagery of like persecuting what Spenser would think of as the true church.
Well, Protestant imagery on reflecting on the Catholic responses to the Reformation in particular.
Right. And it's an altar. Protestant churches have not liked to call their tables altars.
Yes.
And he highlights that these are true Christians that have been sacrificed here.
This is John Fox.
Yeah.
So the martyr imagery, it's explicit in 36. It's implicit in 35 when you have the guiltless babes and innocents true. The Penguin edition has the footnotes suggesting that this is a reference to the slaughter of the innocents in the Gospels, who were very often spoken of as the first martyrs, in that they literally died for Jesus.
Right.
And so that image is there, but you also have the blood of the martyrs that cries out for vengeance. And yes, that is in the book of Revelation, but it's also Abel's blood crying out in the book of Genesis. And so you have the long tradition within Christianity going back, I think, even to Jesus, who talks about how the blood of all the prophets who have been slain will be, that those who slew the prophets will be held accountable for those who slew all of them from the beginning to the end. The blood of Abel crying out in Genesis, and then in John's Apocalypse, that image of the blood of the martyrs crying out for vengeance, taking from both the utterance of Jesus and the image in Genesis. And then the Protestants of the Reformation saying that is also us. Especially under the reign of Mary Tudor, the way that Protestants were treated. This is Edmund Spenser doing John Fox's Book of Martyrs, including that in here. I mean, it seems really dark given that Orgoglio is basically the big inflated gorilla at the car lot.
Yeah.
He's such a ridiculous villain.
Yeah.
And Duessa is kind of made silly here too.
Yes, we'll see that in a couple.
But
minutes.
She is actually one of the most serious villains of the piece, and under her occasional ridiculousness, we can forget that what she's meant to represent is something that Spenser takes very seriously.
Right. Yeah.
Perhaps unexpected blood of killed infants.
Well, I think that's true. That's true of evil in general. There can be this simultaneous ridiculousness of evil, of the wicked. They are mocked, but they're also committing horrible, horrific acts at the same time. Arthur finally comes to a door that none of the keys on Ignaro's bunch of keys fit the door, so he can't get through it. And it turns out that is where Red Cross is being held. And this is a little bit of a timeline. I'm not sure how to fill this plot hole. Red Cross says he's been in there for 3 months in stanza 38. For now, 3 moons have changed thrice their hue and have been thrice hid underneath the ground since I the heaven's cheerful face did view. I've seen 3 moons go through their phases since I've been in here. So,
Dude.
I don't know. In the story as we read it, the dwarf witnesses him being taken and then immediately goes and finds Una. And it happens in the space of a single stanza.
Mm-hmm.
And then Una meets Arthur. They make their way to Orgoglio's castle. It's possible that more time passed there than we're told. I don't know. She fainted 3 times. Maybe there's meant to be some kind of connection between the 3 faints and
Maybe
3 months passing.
I looked it up. The stanza where the dwarf encounters Una, it literally begins with he's just collected the armor in stanza 19, and then stanza 20, he had not traveled long when on the way he meets Una. So the 3 months aren't there.
Right. But Red Cross is emaciated when he comes out. So there's maybe time works differently in the castle where he, for him, 3 anguishing months have passed.
Well, and how would he know?
Well, he saw the moon go through 3 phases.
Well, did he? I mean, the place that it's described that he's in is completely dark.
That's true. Maybe he just is unaware. That's only been an afternoon.
Yeah.
You know, he did drink of that fountain. So maybe the fact that he's all completely, like his eyes are sunken in when he comes out. And he's all thin and bony. He
shows the effects of, I mean, the way that he's described, it looks awful. If you've seen photos of people who've gone through horrible long-term deprivation, that's the way he's described. Yeah. It doesn't make sense if he just got dropped in that hole yesterday.
Right. No, it's much more serious than that. I did want to point out that when Arthur can't find the key for the door, he literally just tears it off the hinges. This is stanza 39. And this, again, is an example of him reining in his emotions. He hears Red Cross's piteous voice crying out from behind the door. And in stanza 39, it says, which when that champion heard with piercing point of pity, dear his heart was thrilled sore, and trembling horror ran through every joint for ruth of gentle knights so foul forlorn. Which, he shakes off this feeling of pity, got things to do. Shaking off, he rent that iron door with furious force, and indignation fell. So he just tears it right off the hinges. Where entered in, his foot could find no floor. It's this Indiana Jones moment of he rushes through the door and almost falls in because there's no floor. It's just a big pit full of a bad smell.
Yeah, this is a particular kind of dungeon called an oubliette, which was sort of designed for maximal isolation to create the kind of despair that you hear in Red Cross Knight's voice.
Yes. We don't get a long description of how they got him out. It just said, after long pains and labors manifold, he found the means that prisoner up to rear. So they get him out. His thighs are thin. His arms are thin. His flesh shrunk up like withered flowers. But, and this is very sweet, Una in stanza 42, whom when his lady saw, to him she ran with hasty joy, to see him made her glad, and sad to view his visage pale and wan, and she's just so happy to see him, despite the fact that he looks like a prisoner of war.
So something awesome has happened to him in this hole, which looks like a tragedy, but is actually good for him. Stanza 41, you mentioned it, his raw bone arms, so his bony arms, whose mighty brawned bowers were wont to rive steel plates and helmets hue, were clean consumed. Oh no, that's bad. That is bad. But he can no longer pride himself in those things. He's lost the ability to pride himself in that. And even his stanza 42, his visage pale and wan, where erst in flowers of freshest youth was clad, he's no longer handsome.
Right.
He can no longer pretend. He can no longer look in the mirror and think that he is the strong and handsome hero. All those things have been taken away from him here, and that's actually a good thing.
It's a little like he's sort of been deflated, like
Yeah,
Orgoglio.
literally.
um,
But he's still there
Right.
because he isn't just empty air.
right, right, and it's actually his pride has been deflated. And on stanza 44, he tells them he's learned his lesson. The things that grievous were to do or bear, them to renew, I wot, breeds no delight. I do not want to go through this again. Best music breeds delight and loathing ear, but the only good that grows of passed fear is to be wise and ware of like again.
I don't think that's Red Cross Knight. Line 44 said that victorious knight.
Oh.
This is Arthur. This is Prince Arthur.
Oh, I have to reread this now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so stanza 43, she's asking him, welcome, my lord, and weal and woe, whose presence I've lacked, and then whose wrathful wreaks themselves do now allay, and for these wrongs shall treble penance pay of treble good. Good grows of evil's prief. The cheerless man whom sorrow did dismay had no delight to treaten of his grief. His long-endured famine needed more relief. He didn't want to talk about it.
Oh. Huh.
And now Arthur steps in and says, those things that grievous were to do or bear, them to renew, I wot, breeds no delight. Hey, don't ask him about his sufferings.
I don't want to
right
rethink it. I don't want to think about it right now.
He doesn't want. He didn't want to talk about that, says Arthur. Let's take care of him first. Yeah, that's more Arthur good advice.
Yes. No, he's so then we finally get to deal with Duessa. Una spares her. I think it's another one of those moments where Una's presence is necessary for the story to work out the way that it does. Duessa is not slain. She is instead embarrassed. She's stripped and then left to go. And this is just one of those parts where the first time you read this, it sticks in your mind. You just can't get rid of it. I mean, we could talk a little bit about the imagery here, but it's just, it's the book of Proverbs where you think that Lady Folly is beautiful. And then when you get to actually see what she's like, she turns out to be horrible. And Spenser spares he has no limit. Well, I guess he does have a limit, but he goes into quite a lot of detail about how horrible she looks. Such as she was, this is stanza 46, their eyes might her behold, that her misshaped parts did them appall. A loathly, wrinkled hag, ill-favored, old, whose secret filth good manners biddeth not be told. But he does not stop there. He goes into detail.
It would be rude to tell you how terrible she looks.
And then
I'm gonna.
She's bald, as in hate of honorable eld. I think what he means there is she doesn't even have gray hair, which is what Proverbs says is the glory of the old. She's bald, completely bald. She's got a scabby scalp. Her breasts are hanging down like bladders lacking wind, just like Orgoglio.
Ew.
Her rizzled skin is rough as maple rind. And then he does rein it in a little bit on stanza 48. Her nether parts, the shame of all her kind, my chaster muse for shame doth blush to write. So I'm not going to talk about that, but she turns around. At her rump, she growing had behind a fox's tail, with dung all foully dight. Not only does she have a tail on her backside, but it's covered with dung that's stuck to that. And her feet are, one is an eagle's claw and one's a bear paw. And I'm sure that those two beasts, there's some kind of imagery, specific imagery there. But yeah, she's just a chimera of parts of various beasts and as almost inhuman.
I mean, so she has been disguised this whole time. But we all knew that this was going to happen because long ago, in what canto was it even? Remember the trees
at the very beginning?
Yeah,
when they go to error.
No, the talking trees.
Oh, that's
yeah, Canto 2, when the talking tree Fradubio.
Oh, he saw
who had
her
previously been
saw her
deceived
bathing, right?
her. Yes, stanza 1. I chanced to see her in her proper hue, bathing herself in Oregon in time. Oregano, I guess. A filthy foul old woman I did view, that ever to have touched her I did deadly rue. Her neither parts misshapen, monstrous, were hid in water, that I could not see, but they did seem more foul and hideous than woman-shaped man would believe to be. So
we actually did know this already.
Yeah, like she's been hiding. She's had this disguise on the whole time, but now is revealed to be this, this monster hag. And having been unmasked, her power is taken away because she is falsehood, and falsehood unmasked is powerless. And so she wanders off.
Do we have anything else to add here?
I don't think so. I mean, well, except that she lives to fight another day.
Right.
She will, there will be references to her later on in book 1, but she's going to survive until she's going to show up again. I think in book 4, I think we see her again. And I don't think it's until book 5 that she's going to meet her demise.
Wow. So Una's act of mercy has far-reaching consequences.
It does.
Okay. I think that's it for this episode. Join us next time.